pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This time I'll call to order the Monday, November 6, 2017 City Council meeting. Mrs. Powell, roll call please.
Fitzwater.
Here.
Graham.
Here.
Henry.
Here.
Hussey.
Here.
Kemna.
Here.
Mahalovich.
Here.
Prather.
Here.
Schreiber.
Here.
Ward.
Here.
Wiseman.
Thank you. And before we go on to adopt the agenda, I want to welcome Mrs. Emily Donaldson, who is here with us this evening, and she is going to be our next city clerk, as Mrs. Powell will be retiring at the end of the year. So we're really glad to have you on board. Look forward to having you here, Mrs. Donaldson. So welcome and congratulations. Item 3, is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'd like to amend the agenda to move item 14A to 4B.
All right, is there?
14.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 4A is a recognition of the Helias Lady Crusaders that are the state volleyball champions, and they will be here at our next city council meeting. It works better for their schedule to be here next council meeting, which is Monday night, November 20th. So at this time, I want to just take a moment to congratulate the state volleyball champions for Helias Lady Crusaders. Very exciting, and thank you, Councilman Mahalovich, for helping to get them invited. I think it's great to recognize our champion students, and so we'll have them here at our next meeting. All right, so now item 4B, we are going to have Resolution 2017-14, and I think we're going to start with a presentation Mr. Eric Barron is going to put on the screen. And I know we also have a few members in the audience that are here that are part of the South Side Plan. So would you two want to come up to the podium first, and we'll introduce you, and then you can be up here for the presentation. And we have Mr. Gasper Calvaruso, President of Capital Region Medical Center, and Lorelei Schwartz, who's a member of the board. Welcome.
Thank you.
We're really glad to have you all here. I know you were a big part in seeing this through.
We were. We were. Thank you very much. And I don't know if am I supposed to make comments right now, Madam Mayor?
Well, if you want to kind of give a brief introduction, and then we can have Eric give us the presentation, that's fine.
Okay. Well, we've been before the council before, and just want to thank you for the opportunity and for all the work that you've done. As you mentioned, this is Lorelei Schwartz. She's our president of our chair of our board this year and next year. Carlos Graham is also on our board, and so we appreciate their support. The plan has been really a community effort, and Capital Region really just had the privilege of being a catalyst to help start it. But there was a lot of key organizations and individuals that were involved in this particular project to really look at the community that we live in, the South Side, Old Munichburg area, and look at ways to make it better. Lincoln University, the school district of Jefferson City, Elias High School, as well as Capital Region, all hosted community events to bring people together to share their ideas. And those community charrettes, the result of that is really the presentation that Eric's going to be presenting to you. A couple of other notes I'd like to make is the help from the city. Yourself, Mayor Turgeon, Steve and his team, Janice McMullen before she had resigned, before she had
Retired.
Thank you. And Eric has kind of picked up the ball in his team. We had other members, Matt Marash and Todd Spalding, that were involved in our committee to really make this a reality. So big thank you from the people of Old Munichburg and Southside, historic Southside, for the work that the city did to help this project along.
Great. Well, we appreciate you both being here, and glad to have you as part of this project and really getting it moving. And it's exciting to see the level that it is now. And so if you all would stay here, and then we'll just have Eric give us the presentation, then we can engage in some questions and discussion with you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And mostly, I think, echoing a lot of what was said, this item was, of course, has been presented to the Planning Zoning Commission and the City Council in the past and is adopted and a component of the city's comprehensive plan. So this resolution would recognize the plan and the public process that was conducted as part of the planning process to develop the plan. Also the people that were involved, the key stakeholders and members of the community. And so the Capital Region commissioned the plan and hired a planning firm, a professional planning firm, that went through a very extensive public engagement process, which is shown up there on the screen. They formed a committee and also had a number of stakeholder interviews and public workshops, inviting members of the public, not only within the neighborhood, but also outside and throughout the city. Had several focus group work sessions and advisory committee meetings, and through the course of that, developed the key components of the plan. And so it was a very professional public engagement process that the consulting firm H3 Studios went through. And then some of the key people involved in the plan are shown up on the screen. On the left-hand side is the Community Revitalization Committee, so basically the key committee that was involved in putting together the various public comments and planning recommendations and piecing them together so that the consulting firm had direction as to what to put into the plan. And that committee involved several members of Capital Region and its board, elected officials from the city, county, and state, several department directors from the city, several business owners within the area and the community, and other representatives of organizations within the community. And then on the right-hand side is the planning team, essentially the director and principals of the planning firm, H3 Studios, and their staff. And so the neighborhood plan that was put together, again, was built on professional planning recommendations after consultation with a wide cross-section of the community. And so it was a very well-developed plan in terms of incorporating public comment into it and providing those professional recommendations. And so this resolution is meant to recognize the importance of this plan to the future of the South Side and Old Munich-Berg area, and also recognize the parties that were responsible for its creation. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that presentation, and this is such a great example of a business that has taken an active role in their surroundings. I know Capital Region Medical Center did an incredible renovation addition to the hospital, and instead of just looking at that project, you looked, Cap Region looked farther beyond that, looked at the entire area of the community and really made an effort to improve for the future. And this plan is a great guide so that as people look forward to making improvements, they can see that there are plans in place to help and assist and offer suggestions for those improvements. But it's really incredible to see a business like that actually take an active role in caring so much about the surroundings in the community. And I think another example is the artwork in the roundabout, which was also a project that Capital Region contributed to, that's near the hospital, but still it impacts the whole area and creates a positive, very positively reflects on that entire area. So sincerely thank you for your effort.
And I knew I'd forget something. So we're blessed here in Jefferson City to have a great city council, but two members here, Laura Ward and Rick Mihalovich, were key to this, and there are representatives in this community, and they've been fantastic with the support that we've received, not only Capital Region, but the community.
Absolutely. Very committed to that area for sure. So, well, we do have a resolution. Yes, Councilman Mihalovich.
Yeah, I'd just like to say a couple things regarding the South Side plan, and thanks for what you did for that and the invites you gave to the public. But I think what it did for us is it gave us the awareness of the assets that are in the South Side, that there are some jewels, there are some also areas of need. And I think that brings about the important things as we move forward. Number one, as a resident in that South Side, be aware of the plan and know that as a city we have a comprehensive plan for that area, and that hopefully if there are things that are not going the way you would like, that plan gives us a bright future. Second is to the investors in the area that we have telegraphed what we plan to do through our comprehensive plan, and that comprehensive plan sets forth how we expect that area to develop. And that would also move over to what the staff could expect, is that we could expect from the staff some underlying zoning issues that would support the comprehensive plan, and I look forward to working with the planning staff to create those instruments to make it worth what it is. And then as a council, I think we have an obligation to look at this and fund it and try to go as we can, and maybe get some early victories and see where we can go in the future. But thank you for your efforts in this.
Thank you. Any other comments? And do we have a motion to take up Resolution 2017-14?
So moved.
All right, and Mrs. Powell will read the resolution.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, recognizing the historic South Side Old Munichburg District and Neighborhood Plan.
All right, we have our motion and second. Are there any further comments or discussion? All in favor? Oh, roll call, I'm sorry, roll call.
Fitzwater.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Henry.
Aye.
Hussey.
Aye.
Kemna.
Aye.
Mahalovich.
Aye.
Prather.
Aye.
Schreiber.
Aye.
Ward. Wiseman.
Resolution passes and it's unanimous, so congratulations and thank you again for all your efforts. And we'll do, how about if we do a picture, if you two would come forward, and then if the council would come back here behind, and we'll do something to commemorate the passage of the resolution in the Southside Plan.
But I tell you, last time Casper did that, it was.
Standing on tiptoes.
And item 5, there are no public hearings. Item 6, appointments by the mayor. Mrs. Strope, we have Environmental Quality and Housing Authority. Anything to add to that?
No, I'll just add that these are all reappointments.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 7, presentations from staff, consultants, and invited guests. We don't have any this evening. Item 8, announcements by mayor, council, and staff. I'll start with my announcements. First of all, there are some brochures at each of your place about the Grow Native, which is the resource guides for Missouri growing with native plants. The Missouri Municipal League had a recent meeting here in Jefferson City, and they highlighted some of the importance of using native plants, and it was very interesting. I know Councilman Kemna was there, and I believe Councilman Mahalovich were both there at that meeting, and any chance that we can to use our native plants are very important, so I hope you can utilize these resources. So did I miss anyone else that was there at that meeting? Oh, okay. Pardon me? Oh, and Mr. Crowell, too, was there. Thank you. Yes, so it's always good to learn about things that can help us here in the city, so I brought that along for everyone. And also, let's see here. I want to announce a few upcoming events this week. Tomorrow night, Tuesday, November 7th, is another community forum sponsored by Jefferson City Public Schools, and that is 6 to 8 p.m. at Hawthorne Bank West on Amazonas. The next night, Wednesday, November 8th, from 6 to 8 p.m., there's also another community forum sponsored by Jeff City Public Schools, and that one is at Mid-America Bank at Holt Summit on Karen Drive. If you didn't get those dates or times or locations, you can go to the Jefferson City Public Schools website for information on that. Also, upcoming events this week, as we look forward to celebrating Veterans Day this Friday, November 10th. There are several events going on in the capital city. There is Freedom's Corner at 9:30 a.m. We'll have their annual Veterans event, which is at the corner there of High and McCarty Street at the old Warwick Village. And they have a really nice, the Freedom Corner is a great area if you haven't been there to see what they have done there. Be sure to join us that day. And then 11 a.m. this Friday at the Capitol Rotunda, the Jefferson City Veterans Council will be holding their annual Veterans event as well. So we appreciate our veterans. And then also coming up on Thursday, November 30th, is the annual Mayor's Christmas Tree Lighting at Rotary Centennial Park. So save the date for that. And a couple things that happened this last week. On Saturday, we had the dedication of the Gold Star Memorial at the State Capitol building. And Lieutenant Governor Mike Parson also held the first ever Veterans Kickoff Week in conjunction with that event, and invited veterans and first responders from all over the state to be here for that. Also on Friday, the city presented a proclamation to Sergeant Jeffrey Pugilis, and he was visiting Jefferson City for the Operation Bugle Boy events. There were several events that went on for veterans here in the capital city, and he was one of the guest speakers, and he came to speak with our police department, and at that time we presented him a proclamation for Jeffrey Pugilis Day here in Jefferson City to honor his service, and also our own first responders and police officers. And if you're not familiar with him, he was one of the police officers that was critical in capturing the Boston Marathon terrorists. So he was very instrumental in that, and also was featured in a movie that was made to highlight that event as well, and it was an honor to have him here. The one thing that really stuck with me that he talked about was the importance of training, and he had been on the police force for over 30 years, and this was something that training really prepared him for. So one thing that he really stressed is not to underestimate the importance of training, and knowing, of course, being in the positions that we are, how important that is to make sure with our police departments and fire departments that training is always of the utmost importance, because his actions saved many lives as a result. So those were several exciting events that happened here in the capital city, and we do have a few other announcements. I know, believe we want to mention the Capitol Avenue, and that was going to be Mr. Marash.
Thank you. And I'll just give you a little update about the project. Councilman Kinma asked me earlier about that. Basically, we're getting ready to have our ribbon cutting. We've scheduled that for Wednesday, November 15th at 11 a.m. at Capitol and Jackson at that intersection. So everyone's invited to attend that. So we're very near the end of this project. We're basically, our contractor's out working on a punch list, repairing a few little items such as, sidewalk cracks, things like that. But basically, the project consists of a new electrical system, so that's kind of an unusual thing we don't have in the city. Besides the street lights, each street light will support what you would find maybe 6 or 7 outlets in your house, that type of thing. There's electrical there for events. Also, at each mid-block on 4 of the blocks on both sides, there's another 100 amp available circuit, so that's like supplying half of a household at that. So you can think of that would be like a stage or maybe a food truck or something like that could plug in there. So there's a lot of accommodations for this area from an electrical side. But then on the other side, just our standard improvements, new sidewalk, of course, throughout, bike lanes, stamped crosswalks, concrete crosswalks, and parking areas. So it looks like the street's a little narrower than maybe it used to be, just to help keep the traffic slow. But also that bicycle accommodation now we have all the way from the Katy Trail to the MSP, so that's kind of a nice improvement for that area as well. So yet to come, about 2/3 of the trees will have yet to be, all the trees need to be planted still, but they'll probably plant about 2/3 of those this fall. The species that can be planted in the fall are going to be planted. And then there's another species that'll come along in the spring, about another third of the trees. They prefer to be planted in the springtime, so those will come later. But we hope to have all that done before our ribbon cutting.
Great, looking forward to that on Wednesday the 15th at 11, and really also a great example of the city-county partnership that we have on that
Correct.
project. And it looks really, really, really good. I've had a lot of positive comments about that.
Great.
We also have a couple of announcements from Parks, so Mr. Spalding.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. 2 ribbon cuttings coming up this Thursday, the 9th at 2 o'clock. We'll be cutting the ribbon for the new tennis court project that we partnered with Lincoln University on, so hope you can be there for that at the corner of Dunklin and Lafayette. And then on Monday, November the 13th at 4 o'clock, we will be having the ribbon cutting for the metal arch that is at the McCarty Street and Marshall trailhead there, that we partnered with the school district. The Nichols Career Center actually put that together. It looks real nice. Hopefully you've had a chance to see that it's up. The Cultural Arts Commission and Foundation have funded that as well, so 4 events.
Great, looking forward to those 2 events. And Mr. Mahalovich, Councilman Mahalovich?
Yeah, Finance Committee at 7:30 this Thursday across the hall. If you're not going to be able to make it, let me know.
Great. Are there any other council announcements? Councilman Schreiber?
Madam Mayor, yesterday we had the charter chapter of the Grand Army of the Republic, Sons of the Union Veterans, induction at the National Cemetery here in Jefferson City, and those that became members, there were about 15 of the charter members, and we wanted to thank you for the proclamation. I read the proclamation for you, and we wanted to thank you for that proclamation, and we are looking for a permanent place to meet, so if anybody's interested in becoming a member, we'll be more than happy to entertain them. And so we want to thank you very much for that proclamation that you gave to us yesterday.
You are very welcome.
you.
Happy to do it, and thank you
Thank
for
you.
representing as well. Any other council announcements? And speaking of history, last night was the annual meeting for the Cole County Historical Society, and if any council members would be interested in joining, it's very reasonable. I think it's around maybe $10 to $15 for an individual member, or up to maybe $50 for a business. But anyway, they do a lot of good work. They had someone portray the unsinkable Molly Brown, which was the interesting highlight of the meeting. And if you didn't know, she was from Hannibal, Missouri. So you learn all kinds of things. But the Cole County Historical Society was last night. And 2 other quick things I want to announce. Everybody has at your place. You're not getting out of it. The Polar Plunge that we are, Sheriff Wheeler and I are helping Special Olympics to recruit people to do the first ever annual Power Hour plunge. So this will fit right in with your schedule. It's a 4:30 p.m. plunge on Wednesday, December 6th, just when it's just starting to get cold. And they'll have it downtown. They'll have a pool that plungers can jump in. And so if you raise $500 to support Special Olympics, then you all can plunge. So we already have some commitments. I'm looking back at Chief Schofield. I've heard he's already committed. He's in. So I hope we have several others in. Hawthorne Bank is in. David from Red Cross. David Griffith, sorry. David is in, and Mike Bernstetter is in. So hopefully we can get several more people in. I can tell heads are nodding that we're going to have others that hopefully we'll get in too. So if anyone's interested, they can call me and I'll make sure and get them signed up, or Sheriff Wheeler.
Wasn't the new clerk supposed to do that?
Oh, no. I think we can make that happen. So, and my very last announcement, I do want to say that Councilman Hussey has been holding out on us that he can make quite an impressive spaghetti sauce, and I think that we motioned and second that from now on he will be required to bring spaghetti when we have long council meetings. So that was very good. You were there to support Rotary with your annual spaghetti dinner, and I know Councilman Kemna was there sampling as well. It was very good. And Councilwoman Ward. So who else was there? Oh, and Ryan was there. Great. Mr. Molman, too. So it was very good. You've been holding out on us, Ken. All right. On to Item 9, presentations on specific bills or resolutions. I don't think we have anyone signed up for that. Item 10, consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 11, bills introduced, 2017-87.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri approving a final PUD plan amendment for property located at 1310 Edgewood Drive.
Mr. Barron?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This bill would modify the permitted uses for a property that has an established PUD plan by adding boarding school as a permitted use of the property. First, to orient you to the location of the property. The property shown up on the screen, highlighted in yellow. Up toward the upper right-hand corner of the screen is the intersection of Stadium and Southwest Boulevards. And so this property is located on Edgewood Drive, the short stretch that connects those two roads south of Stadium. Just off the south side of the slide is Capital Region Medical Center's Southwest Boulevard campus, medical campus. And this property was originally approved through a PUD plan as a daycare in 1989. And so the applicant is actually a St. Nicholas Academy, which is a not-for-profit, and the owner of the property is Capital Region Medical Center. The property is zoned a PUD category, as shown on the screen. The new boarding school use would involve basically about 12 children with house parents being located within the building, so some building modifications to accommodate that. The children would attend local schools in the area, with this Edgewood Drive location being primarily used for boarding purposes. So it's not necessarily the educational component of boarding school that would be located here, but it would be a boarding of students. And Capital Region would retain the ownership of the property and lease the facility to St. Nicholas Academy. It is only a use change in the PUD plan, and I'd be happy to answer any questions the council may have. This item was recommended for approval by the Planning and Zoning Commission, is scheduled for a public hearing at the next council meeting.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Barron? Thank you. 2017-88.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri establishing election dates for city offices for 2018.
Mr. Mulman?
Thank you. This is a procedural ordinance that establishes the municipal election calendar. We do this every year. Basically just sets forth the procedures and the deadlines for conducting the April general municipal election.
Any questions? All right, thank you. 2017-89.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute a $25,250 agreement with American Pride Hauling, LLC for the 1204 East High Street demolition project.
Mrs. Abbott?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This project is utilizing Community Development Block Grant funds. This project is for demolition of a property owned by Habitat for Humanity, for which, after the demolition is completed, a single-family residential house will be reconstructed on the lot. The funds, there was a bidding process, which the bids came back over the $25,000, and therefore it is being read for by you all tonight. I would be happy to answer any questions on the project.
Any questions for Mrs. Abbott? All right, thank you. 2017-90.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute an agreement with Cole County setting procedures for joint city and county capital improvement sales tax for the East High Street Improvements Project.
Mr. Morash?
Thank you. And I'll probably just, it's basically the same agreement as 91, just different projects listed in amounts, but basically these are city-county agreements that we would cooperate on sales tax projects. The source of funds would come from our half-cent sales tax fund and theirs from the road and bridge tax. Basically, they're identifying two projects, the East High Street sidewalks, which is kind of in the vicinity of East School, and Also, the new school road out on the site off Mission Drive for the new high school, which would be a road connecting, that'd be the next bill, number 91, which would be a road connecting from Creek Trail up to the roundabout by St. Mary's Hospital. The time frames for programming the funds are listed in each agreement. As far as the East High sidewalks, 2018, next summer, we'd be hopefully have that under construction. It's a $1.7 million estimated project, split by the city and county, that project, as well as then the new school road is a 2019 programming funding year. 1.5 million is the listed amount for that, and to be available in 2019. Be happy to answer any questions. Basically identifies the city processes are in play for awarding this money, administering the projects, things of that nature, and they're just agreeing that they would fund the project as well at this point.
Any questions? All right, thank you. 2017-91.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute an agreement with Cole County setting procedures for joint city and county capital improvement sales tax for the high school road project.
Mr. Moresh?
And as I indicated, I just explained that at the previous bill.
All right, any further questions? All right. Item 12, bills pending 2017-77.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, amending the 2017-2018 budget by authorizing a $640,000 supplemental appropriation within the general fund for the downtown streetscape repair and electric project.
Mr. Moresh?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Project we've been talking about for a while, but basically this puts the funding in place to move forward on the project, and then the final change order with MECO Engineering to get the electrical component, which was kind of an add-on after we saw what was going on with Capitol Avenue. So it'll very much mirror our capabilities in the downtown High Street area as we'll have on Capitol Avenue as well. So anyway, we anticipate the project actually going out to bid and being under construction yet this coming spring, and trying to miss various events in downtown is a little dicey sometimes, but we're trying to get that project going.
Any questions or council deliberation? Councilman Mahalovich.
Yeah, I look forward to this project, and at one time it had a price tag of about $800,000, so we've sharpened our pencil and worked that out. That was estimated.
Well, this is still estimated at this point, but that's our latest estimate based on our costs we saw on Capitol Avenue.
And I'd hope that the project might include some safety enhancements for Festival District that is frequently used down in downtown areas. So as we get to the funding stage, I'd like to see what solutions we have in that regard.
Yeah, that was, I heard about that. We did discuss it briefly. It's really not in this project, actually. If there are some safety things, that's kind of just our timeline to get this going, and missing events. That hasn't been included to this point. It doesn't mean it can't be included later if that's the wish to do so, but kind of evaluating that, especially with public safety, fire and police. There's a lot of options there. What locations? There's just kind of a lot of unknowns there from my point of view. It's really more about what our law enforcement agencies probably want to see on a regular basis, and where wouldn't necessarily tie to this project, and it could be added at a later date. So the funding is just for the sidewalk repair and the electrical component at this point. So.
Any further questions?
And I just want to. So I don't know that that's an active project. That was kind of somebody just briefly mentioned. I don't know if the chief has any more. If you've been one of the chiefs, want to comment? Or looks like Roger does, but I think.
No, I think we had a brief kind of email exchange a little over 2 months ago, and that's kind of where it stayed. So we've yet to have any substantive meetings, but we certainly will.
So we'll look forward to getting updates as that progresses. Okay. So on the current bill, any further deliberation? Okay, roll call, please.
Graham.
Aye.
Henry. Hussey.
Aye.
Kimna.
Aye.
Mahalovich.
Aye.
Prather.
Aye.
Schreiber.
Aye.
Ward. Wiseman. Fitzwater.
Aye.
Motion passes. Bill passes, I'm sorry. Okay, 2017-78.
An ordinance amending the code of the City of Jefferson, Missouri pertaining to the Cultural Arts Commission members to correct a typographical error.
Mr. Spalding.
Thank you, Mayor. This is just to amend the Cultural Arts Commission composition to clarify that one of the 11 members, the Parks and Recreation Committee, will appoint one staff or commission member to serve as a voting member. This mirrors the Environmental Quality Commission as well.
Any questions or deliberation? Roll call, please.
Henry.
Aye.
Hussey.
Aye.
Kemna.
Aye.
Mahalovich.
Aye.
Prather.
Aye.
Schreiber.
Aye.
Ward. Wiseman. Fitzwater.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Bill passes. 2017-80.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, amending Section 3-3 Alcohol, Drug, and Controlled Substance Abuse Policy of the Personnel Policy Manual.
Mrs. Stroh.
Thank you. This ordinance amends the alcohol, drug, and controlled substance abuse policy within the Personnel Policy Manual. Every 3 years, the Transit Division undergoes a triennial review by the FTA. The drug and alcohol policy is one item they inspect. The FTA has asked us to add language to clarify when an employee is given a post-accident test that is mandated by the FTA as opposed to mandated by our policy. The added language does not change our policy or when we test an employee after an accident. There's no fiscal impact, and staff recommends passing this, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions or deliberation? All right, roll call, please.
Hussey.
Aye.
Kemna.
Aye.
Mahalovich.
Aye.
Prather.
Aye.
Schreiber.
Aye.
Ward. Wiseman. Fitzwater.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Henry.
Aye.
Bill passes. 2017-81.
An ordinance amending Chapter 19, Motor Vehicles and Traffic, Schedule D, One-Way Roadways, and Schedule J, Parking Prohibited, of the Code of the City of Jefferson, Missouri by designating the 1100 block of Monroe Street two-way.
Mr. Marash.
Thank you. As clerk indicated, this is just a code modification to our traffic, portion of our traffic code, but basically it allows us to leave in place the two-way traffic from Woodlawn to Franklin Street near Capital Region Hospital. We put that in place due to our roundabout construction and some of our detour routes, so it went over well. The Capital Region ended up with all the properties along this section, so nobody's living there any longer. And so the street is somewhat narrow, but it would accommodate, similar to what our detour route did, it would accommodate two-way traffic. So it's kind of a temporary measure until something more extensive can be done, but we'll be adding some more official signage and some additional barriers near Franklin Street to make this more permanent.
Any questions or deliberation? Roll call, please.
Kemna.
Aye.
Mahalovich.
Aye.
Prather.
Aye.
Schreiber.
Aye.
Ward. Wiseman. Fitzwater.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Henry.
Aye.
Hussey.
Aye.
Bill passes. 2017-82.
An ordinance amending Chapter 19, Motor Vehicles and Traffic, Schedule J, Parking Prohibited, of the Code of the City of Jefferson, Missouri pertaining to parking on a portion of Swifts Highway west and within 175 feet of Myrtle Avenue.
Mr. Marash.
Thank you, and I don't know if it's appropriate to add the substitute now and let me explain it, or do we want to explain it? Or?
Yes.
The council can take it up the substitute now. It's their pleasure.
Okay. So we'll, Councilman.
I motion to
Okay.
make the substitute.
Is there a second? All in favor of taking up the substitute, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so we'll add, Mr. Marash will add the substitute now.
Okay. Basically, it does something very similar, but during after the construction of the new Elias Sports Complex, some of the residents of the area came forward with a traffic and transportation request to limit parking in front of their homes, about 3 homes on the south side of the street. At the same time, I've got some feedback from the council that there might be a need to do the same on the north side of the street in the same area next to the sports complex itself, just due to the narrowness of the streets after a large event. It's very, very congested there. So basically, it would limit, it would institute no parking on the south side of Swifts near Myrtle for about 175 feet, and then along the north side of Swifts near Myrtle, along the Helias Sports Complex, and it's already signed no parking there in front of the church as well. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Deliberation? Okay. We'll take up 2017-82 as substituted then. Mrs. Powell, roll call, please.
Mahalovich,
Aye.
Prather.
Aye.
Schreiber.
Aye.
Ward.
Aye.
Wiseman.
Aye.
Fitzwater.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Henry.
Aye.
Hussey.
Aye.
Kemna.
Aye.
Bill passes. 2017-83.
An ordinance amending Chapter 19 Motor Vehicles and Traffic of the Code of the City of Jefferson, Missouri by modification of portions to match existing conditions.
Mr. Morash?
Thank you. When we're in the traffic code, just like similar before, we try to note any discrepancies we note versus what's in the code and in the field, and so this is about 3 or 4 pages of them that we've caught and are recommending to be changed to match field conditions.
Any questions or deliberation? Roll call, please.
Prather.
Aye.
Schreiber.
Aye.
Ward.
Aye.
Wiseman.
Aye.
Fitzwater.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Henry.
Aye.
Hussey.
Aye.
Kemna.
Aye.
Mahalovich.
Aye.
Bill passes. 2017-84.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute a $126,852.91 agreement with Bartlett and West for the Clark Avenue Interchange and Corridor Traffic Study Project.
Mr. Morash?
Thank you. This is, as the clerk indicated, engineering contract with Bartlett and West, and they'll be subbing some traffic work to a firm out of St. Louis, Crawford, Bunty, and Braemar. But basically, we're going to study the Clark Avenue interchange as part of the half-cent sales tax discussion, where city and county would share in a larger project there. So this is the first phase, looking at the corridor to determine what the corridor needs are, and whether it's on city right-of-way, MoDOT right-of-way, what have you. But it will, the corridor to be studied extends from McCarty Street all the way to Hillcrest, which is near the Montessori School, if you're familiar with that area. So that whole corridor would be looked at, those intersections, and once completed, we could then go back, approach the state about maybe cost-sharing projects, or at least know, some phasing of projects that could go on with this corridor.
Any questions or deliberation? Roll call, please.
Schreiber.
Aye.
Ward.
Aye.
Wiseman.
Aye.
Fitzwater.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Henry.
Aye.
Hussey.
Aye.
Kemna.
Aye.
Mahalovich.
Aye.
Prather.
Aye.
Bill passes. 2017-85.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri authorizing a general fund supplemental appropriation of $34,800 within the fiscal year 2018 budget for the purchase of computer hardware and software.
Mr. Sanders?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As several of you are aware, that over the past 18 months, we have increased our efficiency, and this year, I'm proud to say, we've doubled the number of code enforcement violations and have actually increased the number of parcels that have been impacted by 1,000 to 1,300. So we've been more efficient. This is an unfunded budget item from the 2018 budget process. Since that time, we've actually gone further and reviewed what our current processes are and discovered that one of our issues is we have to return back to the office to access our Springbrook software, our GIS software, and to get mailings out by a certain time. We've calculated that we would actually benefit from an additional 3/4 of an FTE by purchasing the software. The software cost about $34,800 for the first year. The funds would be based on 2017 savings and personnel costs that are going to go back in the general revenue fund. So this bill would actually be a supplemental appropriation from the general revenue into the property maintenance, proper category in my budget. The ongoing cost would be from a grant that we've been having for the last 3 years, which requires a 15% match from the city. We're no longer going to have that grant available to us, and that match, I think, in next year's budget alone was close to $30,000, $40,000, so it will more than cover the $13,000 in ongoing cost. The software would allow 5 property inspectors to have mobile terminals out in the field where they can actually avoid going back and forth to see if there's already been an issue written up, and actually go ahead and process the letters out in the field, so they can actually stay out in the field all day and not have to come back and forth. And it also provides for a web portal so citizens can see where property violations have occurred. Are they already in the queue? Are they in the mix? People can actually report on property inspection violations and things like that. The software could also serve as the base for expanding into the building regulations division for plan reviews and also for those inspectors. Our environmental health inspectors that do the restaurant inspections, they use similar software to this with mobile terminals, and it's amazing how efficient they are. Their monthly reports of all their statistics are already just by press of a button, so added reporting is also a benefit we get from this. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Questions or deliberation? Well, I know as many code questions and phone calls that the council members and that we all get, I think this is great to see that it will be more efficient, and I think the public will really see an increase in service by it. So thank you. Mrs. Powell, roll call, please.
Ward.
Aye.
Wiseman.
Aye.
Fitzwater.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Henry.
Aye.
Hussey.
Aye.
Kemna.
Aye.
Mahalovich.
Aye.
Prather.
Aye.
Schreiber.
Aye.
Bill passes. 2017-86.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, amending the 2017-2018 budget of the City of Jefferson, Missouri by appropriating additional funds within the general fund and within the sales tax F fund, as well as reappropriating funds within the general fund from fiscal year 2017 to fiscal year 2018.
Mr. Sanders. I'm sorry, Chief Schofield.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Sorry about that.
As the clerk read, this would secure the majority of the funding for the future Fire Station 2 project. It would also reappropriate some of FY17 funds into 18 that we've already encumbered as part of our design and consultation services through the architects and engineers for the project. Additionally, I'd like to mention that on this project, we've been at this for a little over a year, and we went through a very in-depth process to come up with the design, working with the consultants, the engineers, and the architects. And the folks that are here tonight with us were part of that committee. They spent a lot of time doing a lot of in-depth research and site visits to develop not only a very efficient plan, but also one that's going to be well served to our community for many years to come. We had representatives from all 3 shifts, all 3 ranks, as well as command staff, and we really feel like we've got a pretty good plan started. We are still in the design and development phase. We would, if this were to be approved tonight, we would come back to council before going out to bid to kind of bring a much more finalized and complete construction documents to the council for their approval prior to going out to bid. Be happy to answer any questions, as well as I'm sure the committee would. We also have our architects here from Architects Alliance. They would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Great. Thank you all, first of all, for being here tonight and for all your hard work and effort in this project, and I appreciate all the input. That will definitely help us have a better project, and something we're very much looking forward to, and I know the community is too. Is there any council questions or deliberation? Okay. Roll call, please.
Wiseman.
Aye.
Fitzwater.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Henry.
Aye.
Hussey.
Aye.
Kemna.
Aye.
Mahalovich.
Aye.
Prather.
Aye.
Schreiber.
Aye.
Ward.
Aye.
Bill passes. Again, thank you to you, Chief Schofield, and to the department and the committee that helped get this going. Thank you. And item 13, nothing on the informal calendar. Item 14, resolutions. We've already taken up item A. Next one is 2017-15.
A resolution of the City of Jefferson, Missouri adopting the CDBG 2018 Action Plan and authorizing its submission to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Mrs. Abbott.
Thank you. I'm going to do a quick presentation tonight about the Community Development Block Grant Program, which, well, I'm being told to just go ahead and carry forward. All right. So back in 2004, the city of Jefferson became an entitlement community for the U.S. Housing and Urban Development Funds, known as Community Development Block Grant, or what I call CDBG. The program has been authorized by the Title I of the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974. The funds are a block grant, and they can be used to address critical and unmet community needs, including those for housing, rehabilitation, infrastructure, economic development, demolition, slum and blight, and many more activities. I think there's a total of 63 activities that are eligible within the program. Each year, the CDBG funds are distributed to state and local governments according to the population, poverty rates, and other housing variables. So the Community Development Block Grant Funds, they seek to develop viable communities with promoting integrated approaches that provide decent housing, suitable living environment, and expand economic opportunities for the low to moderate income persons. The primary means towards this end is the development of partnerships among all levels of the government, the private sector, and those, including those for-profits and non-for-profit organizations. Each entitlement receiving CDBG funds is free to determine what activities it will fund, as long as certain requirements are met, including those activities. Eligibility meets the national objectives, benefiting persons of low to moderate income, aiding in the prevention and elimination of slum and blight, or meets an urgent development need, which is defined as posing a serious and immediate threat to the health or welfare of the community within the last 18 months. Okay, so the consolidated plan is a 5-year strategic plan that is designed to help states and local jurisdictions assess their affordable housing and community development needs and market conditions, and to make data-driven, place-based investment decisions. The consolidated plan process serves as a framework for the community-wide dialogue to identifying housing and community development priorities that align with the focus from funding from the Community Development Block Grant Program. So the consolidated plan, the 5-year consolidated plan, is carried out through annual action plans, which provides a concise summary of actions and activities and specify federal and non-federal resources that will be utilized to address those priority needs that were identified within the consolidated plan. So that's what I'm here to talk to you tonight about, is the 2018 annual action plan. If I can get it to work. So we kicked off our kind of citizen participation or public outreach back in June during a Thursday Night Live event. We were tag along to the Campo Kids, as we say, for an event that they were doing, and we were out there polling all the attendees of the Thursday Night Live, having buckets, literally buckets lined up with, home or housing support, down payment, infrastructure improvements, public services. So we gave out beans to participants, and they would put their beans in the buckets for which they felt funding needed to go towards. So they are essentially the grant administrator in deciding how should these funds be utilized. So it was a really interactive activity, and it was very interesting how those figures came back. We also made a survey available online. We posted online and made available through October 20th. We did our first kickoff meeting on September 19th, which had a draft plan with draft budget for our programs, including the homeowner support, the infrastructure improvement, the infrastructure improvements, the demolition assistance, and of course our administration funds and public services. So we held the public meeting. We're like, all right, this is our budget. Tell us if we got it right. And then we did an email blast about that information, taking comments on that for a full 30 days, where we took comments through October 20th. Well, excuse me, I also made a presentation to the Public Works and Planning Committee on October 19th, and then I held a final public meeting on October 26th to present the final plan, which was amended based off the comments that we did receive. So here's our summary of comments that we received. Off of the Survey Monkey function, there was, the comments indicated more funding directed to down payment assistance, lighting and sidewalks for the east side, sidewalks along Hickory Street, and then more Crime Stopper activists in the community. We received written comments, a couple of them, providing more funding for down payment and infrastructure improvements, and then to remove public services funding as other sources of funds are available for down payment, so that funds will be available for down payment and infrastructure improvements. So, based off of these comments, our budget was adjusted. And I failed to mention that we only receive approximately $245,000 a year. So it's hard to make these budgets to make sure it meets all of our community needs. So our final budget for the year is to fund 9 households with down payment assistance of $5,000. For homeowner support program, that's where we assist with code efficiency or energy efficiency improvements. Those are also at $5,000 or up to $5,000 to do 6 households. I will make a note that you see in parentheses underneath the 15,198, we typically get program income from these programs where the individual participated in the program, we file the deed of trust, promissory note. If they sell their house before the 5 years, the funds come back to the program, which we funnel back into the homeowner support. So we anticipate receiving $15,000, which we would ultimately help with the 6 households. The infrastructure improvement, we have that at $104,000. And demolition assistance, we anticipate doing 2 buildings at $30,000. Now, back up on infrastructure improvements, that would assist approximately 3,000 individuals. That's dependent on what census tracts the improvement is completed. So, administration, we can withhold 20%, and that rounds out our proposed budget to $244,499, which is, ironically, our 2017 allocation. We always use our last allocation for our budgeting for the next year. Our program year begins January 1st, so it's just a few months away. We are required to submit our annual action plan to HUD by on or after November 15th, and then they have 90 days to review it, and then our program year begins January 1. I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have about this process.
Any questions? Councilman Mahalovich?
In 2016, we had $262,000. The year before that was $226,000. But here's the thing, as the population increases, more and more entitlement communities come on board, so there tends to be more entitlement communities across the nation, so that comes into play as well. Yes, sir.
Any other questions or deliberation? Thank you for all your effort on this, Mrs. Abbott.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Is there a motion to take up 2017-15?
So moved.
Second.
Any further deliberation? Roll call, please.
Fitzwater,
Aye.
Graham,
Aye.
Henry,
Aye.
Hussey,
Aye.
Kemna,
Aye.
Mahalovich,
Aye.
Prather,
Aye.
Schreiber,
Aye.
Ward, Wiseman,
Aye.
Resolution passes. Resolution 2017-16.
a resolution of an official intent of the Council of the City of Jefferson, Missouri for the issuance of the city's industrial development revenue bonds in a principal amount not to exceed $34,124,000 to finance a project for the benefit of Command Web Offset Company, Incorporated, and authorizing certain actions relating thereto.
Mr. Molman?
Thank you. This resolution is an initial kickoff action by the City Council to begin the processes for completing Chapter 100 tax abatement program for a company called Command Web Missouri. I have members of the representatives from the Jefferson City Area Chamber of Commerce here to give project-specific details, but I can go kind of briefly through what this resolution specifically does. This resolution makes a finding of public benefit, which is a requirement under Chapter 100 to provide property tax abatement. Then it also provides chamber staff, city staff, and bond council direction to pursue a Chapter 100 program to provide the tax abatement for the Command Web projects. All this does is basically give some indication to both staff and the developer that this is an item that the City Council would like to return in a final form for its final consideration. There's no final action taken on this resolution, but rather shows the intent to proceed because proceeding with Chapter 100 is a expensive proposition, and so developers and staff working on this want to make sure that this is a project that the City Council is comfortable with proceeding on before substantial resources are committed to actually drawing up the bonds and the appropriate paperwork to effectuate the property tax on this project. Like I said, Chamber representatives here if there's any project-specific questions.
Well, we have with us Mr. Allen from the Chamber and Mr. Sappenfield and Ms. Bono, so if y'all would you all like to come forward and add anything or come to the podium in case the council has any questions? And welcome and glad to have you here, and it's very impressive, Command Web and what they do in our community as an employer and what they produce and the impact that they have really on the community itself too.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. Command Web, located here in Jefferson City in 1994. They are primarily supplying Scholastic here. They supply juvenile books. In 2017, they supplied juvenile books to Scholastic and to other entities as well. In 2016, they produced over 200 million books that calendar year, and their employment stands just over 200. So they have obviously been a economic driver within our community since 1994 and continue to be. They are located, the corporate office is located out of Secaucus, New Jersey. The Chamber and Chamber staff, we have been working with them. We have been working with them for quite some time, but specifically on this project for more than a year. We bring substantial benefit, obviously, with the investment, both real and personal property, and additional jobs in this bond would help secure that project in full. There are still a few moving parts, but would help secure it in full with the bulk of the investment looking at 2018.
Thank you, Mr. Sappenfield. Are there any questions of council or any deliberation? Councilwoman Ward?
I apologize if I missed this number, but do you know the amount of additional jobs that this will create?
Yes. There are two pieces to this project. I referred to kind of a moving parts. The Project A, as we call it, will create 25 jobs. If the Project B, as we're calling it, will hit, if they can secure that contract with their customers, it will add another 26. So overall, 51 jobs.
Any further questions or deliberation? Okay, is there a motion to approve 2017-16?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any further discussion or deliberation? Roll call, please.
Graham,
Aye.
Henry,
Aye.
Hussey,
Aye.
Kimna,
Aye.
Mahalovich.
Aye.
Prather.
Aye.
Schreiber.
Aye.
Ward.
Aye.
Wiseman.
Abstain.
Fitzwater.
Aye.
Resolution passes, and again, thank you to the Chamber for supporting and being here and informing us. Thank you. Resolution 2017-17.
A resolution creating the Missouri State Penitentiary Community Partners, designating members thereto, and providing direction and recommendations.
Mr. Molman?
Thank you. This resolution creates an entity called the Missouri State Penitentiary Community Partners. What this group would do is primarily it would be tasked with giving recommendations on the redevelopment of the portion of the Missouri State Penitentiary, which will be conveyed to the city under Senate Bill 486. Membership of this group includes the mayor, 4 council members, 3 members of the county commission, Representative Mr. Randy Allen from the Chamber of Commerce, Ms. Gillespie from the Jefferson City Convention and Visitors Bureau, Ms. Kathy Brown, who is the Director of Facilities and Management, Design and Construction for Missouri Office of Administration. This would be an advisory board who would make recommendations to the City Council on both the development of an RFP for redevelopment of the Missouri State Penitentiary area, and then once RFPs are received from potential developers, they would review those RFPs and make a recommendation to the City Council. This body is also empowered to make other recommendations to the City Council, which it believes are pertinent to redevelopment to the MSP site. This is a city board or commission, if you will, and is therefore subject to things like sunshine law and would be expected and required to fill out appropriate meeting notices. And this resolution directs the community partners to encourage and solicit public input in its deliberations in redevelopment of the Missouri State Penitentiary area.
Thank you, Mr. Molman. And I'll elaborate on that also a little more, that with this Missouri State Penitentiary Community Partners, and that's really what it is, it's a group of community partners that work together to get the bill to fruition and where it is now. And this is something where the city ultimately will be making the decisions on the project, but with consultation from this from the community partners. And even though the city is going to be the property owner of the designated area, we realize it would be important to get support from the community partners, and those partners are the city, county, state, chamber, and convention and visitors bureau. And then, of course, there are many other partners in the community as well that will be advising and giving input. And those 5 entities that in the community partners that will that are 11 people, I'll touch on that briefly, that the council members will represent the area. So we have the prison itself is in Ward 1, so we have Councilman Prather representing that ward. But not too far from it is Ward 2, actually Jackson Street, which is the back of the federal courthouse, to give you an idea of how close Ward 2 is to the prison. So we have Councilman Mahalovich representing that ward. And then Councilman Schreiber from Ward 5, which is around Dunklin. So the 3 wards that are in walking distance will all 3 have councilmen sitting on the community partners. And then also Councilman Fitzwater. So we'll have representation from outside the wards as well. But we appreciate that because, with your representational capacity and having elected representatives, you all really have the interest of the wards, and appreciate the having that. So if there are any, neighbor either concerns or issues, they'll have a clear path to get those concerns to the council directly. So we appreciate those council members that are going to be participating actively with the partners, although we would hope that all council members will be interested in attending these meetings as they're set. And looking at the other partners, having the county commissioners is vital because they are the group that will, we have our partnerships, city and county, for our sales tax for funding the MSP Parkway for the road that will be built. So having the county commissioners is very vital to this project. And then also the Convention and Visitors Bureau, as they, we currently have the long-term lease with the state and city for the CVB to conduct their tours. And of course, the historic area will remain intact, but still it's very important that we have direct input from the CVB. And also as we look forward to the master plan and things such as hotel and civic and conference space that are on there, those are things that the Convention and Visitors Bureau and lodging tax would be a direct part of as well. So having the CVB as part of that, and then the Chamber of Commerce as we work through the economic development piece, and the city works closely with the Chamber on the economic development, and the Chamber has been very closely working with the city and getting the bill passed. And then, of course, the state. Having the partnership with the state and the Office of Administration is definitely vital, as the state will continue to own about 95 acres there. So just want to give some background on those community partners. And there are a lot of other community stakeholders that would be interested in, and we want to make sure that these stakeholders are informed about the meeting so that they can also give input to the partners. And in alphabetical order, those would include businesses, the Capitol Avenue Landmark League, Cultural Arts Commission, the Downtown Association, East Side Association, Historic City of Jefferson, hoteliers, legislators, library, Lincoln University, meeting planners, Old Munichburg Association, Parks and Recreation Department, and West Side Association. And that's not a limited list, but a list to start with to make sure that those stakeholders are aware of the meetings and interested and can participate. Like Ryan said, the meetings will be posted. They will be open meetings. We look forward to public participation and input through the process. And also want to mention that I have also reached out to former Mayor John Landwehr, as he was in this seat when the talk of Missouri State Penitentiary redevelopment started, and he's been involved from the beginning, and look forward to his input as well. So very exciting time, so thank you for letting me elaborate that. We also have Mr. Randy Allen here tonight, so appreciate the community partnership that we have with this group. So very exciting time to move forward. So are there any questions, council deliberation? Councilman Hussey.
Just a couple for Ryan. Am I correct? I mean, we're creating a separate city board in ordinance here, like other boards and commissions we would have on record?
Yeah, so essentially this is a limited duration board, likely probably won't be around forever.
Yeah.
But yes, operated under the umbrella of the city. So, akin to something like the Planning Commission or, the Cultural Commission or something like that.
And so is the proper process to usually go through a resolution for that, or a more like a bill that, I'm just wondering, like, if this is the most appropriate legislative action to do this? This is an appropriate way to do that. I wouldn't say that there's a right or wrong way between ordinance or resolution. This is a way to create it. I think this is sufficient. But certainly, if there were objections to this particular path, this can be recast as a bill. Okay. And now we've not specified a time frame within this, but we've specified individuals to serve as opposed to offices or organizations to have seats. And so is that unique? I guess I look at that, I read that, it seemed a little odd that a lot of times in our boards and commissions we specify seats for different entities, and then those entities dictate who that representation is. But for instance, we haven't said this is only going to be a 2 or 3 year board, but we've named some people and basically have slotted them for the remainder of their term in office. Like, is that appropriate, or should we do it? Should we go the other route and say it's going to be 4 council representatives nominated and confirmed by the mayor type thing with specific terms to serve?
That's really the pleasure of the city council. This is a way to do it. Okay. If there is an alternative way to do it, we could certainly spell it that way. You point out correctly that the terms here in the resolution said that the term shall coincide with the office as indicated in the resolution, and that if a member no longer holds that office, then the governing body of the organization that person represents here would then be responsible for naming someone to fill in. So it provides for continuity of membership on the board. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer on how to do this. This is just a way. If there is a pleasure of the council to go another direction, staff would certainly take that direction, which is, this is just a proposal.
Okay.
And it was a proposal suggested by Mr. Molman as we talked about what was the best way, or, make it to form the group. So appreciate his input.
My main concern was having continuity of membership, and so I tried to reflect that herein. But if there's a different mechanism, certainly that's something that can be drawn up.
I don't disagree with that. I always like to know who's naming people to in particular. So, for example, are we naming the executive director of the CVB to the board, regardless of who that is, or are we naming Diane Gillespie? And if Diane were to leave that position, does CVB just assume that the new executive director takes the spot, or does that require action back on this body to do those sorts of things?
Right. So what's contemplated in the bill is a specific person named originally to the board, and so the council would name the person. But if that person no longer fulfills their position, what this does is then directs the the organization to select a successor. So it's really kind of two different functions: city council naming an individual on the front end, and if any replacements are needed, it would be up to the organization to fill in the successor. So if, for example, Ms. Gillespie is no longer with the CVB wouldn't necessarily be locked into naming their executive director. They could name a president, or some other person that they feel is appropriate to represent their interests.
Okay. And I certainly know this is an important step forward. It's a city board and commission. I count it, and I know it's a recommendation advisory body, but there's 11 votes, and we only gave ourselves 5 of the 11. A lot of times when it's a city-controlled thing still, you keep a majority of the votes for your vested interest. If you think about the TIF commission, technically, I think we have a majority of the votes on the TIF commission as a city, right? Or maybe we don't. I'm thinking of Campo. I think it's Campo that we have. Anyway, and so not splitting hairs. Maybe it's just I didn't see this in its final form until Thursday when the packet dropped, and so it seems a little. This is a major step for this project, and I'm not trying to delay our efforts, but it's a lot to sort of absorb and say, this is the mechanism going forward, this is the makeup of things, what's the specific charge, we set a time frame on it. I know those are things that we don't have answers to. I've heard about outside individuals. The state has a vote on this particular body as opposed to an ex officio status. If you think about it, this body's going to review RFPs, and I know that's done in a public setting, but that vote that's taken, whenever that point in time comes, is going to carry some weight, and it's going to come back to the council for consideration. So I think it's important for us to give consideration as to who has a vote in that particular step in the process. As we all know, it's challenging at times to go against an advisory or recommendation body when it comes to a final vote on something, and so I guess I'm just absorbing it and appreciate the step. I know there's a desire to get moving. I don't know if we have the property yet. Is this a step towards concluding that MOU? I'll just leave it at that for right now.
I can answer a few of those concerns and appreciate them. Councilman Hussey, about the MOU and where we are in the process, we are currently working with the state to complete the MOU, and So the MOU will outline the time frame, like you mentioned, what is the time frame? So the MOU will tell us what the time frame is of what the amount of time is that our group will need to act. And I say, actually not our group, what time, the amount of time the city would need to act. And so that will be outlined in the MOU. Should be completed soon, I would think, and knowing that, or rather than waiting for the completed MOU and then begin the process, we thought it would be smart to go on and get the community partners together so that we would be ready to act when the MOU is complete, so that we can kind of be ahead of the game on that. And then specific charge is somewhat outlined here in the different sections about working on the RFP and then selecting the developer or developers. And both of those items would definitely, end up in the council to make the final decision. And the question about the state and being ex officio, the state has been a really great partner, and they are, we will still be following their guidelines and their MOU, and having them as part of the team would be, I think, very effective and helpful, having them every step of the way. And they've helped to get us to the point where we are now with it as well. And you also mentioned the having the 5 city representatives. I know there's 11 on the group, so we thought that would also help to show that we really are open to all ideas, and it's not just something that the city would have complete control over the input, that the input would be shared among community partners, but also knowing that ultimately the decision would come back to the entire council. But we would also have the opportunity for all voices to be heard and all input to be heard. If that helps to answer some of those questions, Councilman Hussey. Councilman Graham?
At this list, I noticed that the county is represented by all 3 representatives from the county, and it looks to me here that we have each ward has a representative on this MSPCP, with the exception of Ward 3. So I would like to suggest that because we got one from 1, 2, 4, and 5, and I think it should be fair that we add someone from Ward 3 to this committee as well too. So
Okay. Well, we can certainly ask if Councilman Hussey or...
Well, that's not what I was going for.
I know it's not where you was going, but that's where I'm going.
My comments here, I appreciate that, and certainly not the case. I'm sure plates are full. I'm not necessarily wanting to add something. I'm looking at Councilwoman Wiseman, who's got a full trial and legal schedule these days. On the MOU in particular, I guess my question, and maybe Ryan, you can answer this question. The bill authorizes the conveyance of the property. We go through an MOU process. The mayor mentioned a time frame to act on certain things. Is that language that's written into it that the state could potentially pull back the property, or is it being conveyed and it's sort of ours to do with working with them? I guess I would be interested in some clarity on that.
Sure. The MOU does contemplate some timeframes which emanate from closing on the property. Essentially, what the state has proposed to us are both a timeline to select a developer and then to actually begin construction. Those timelines start with actual conveyance of the property to the city. So there are some benchmarks there that the city would have to meet. Otherwise, the state would have what's called a right of reentry. Essentially, they can take the property back. We're still in negotiations on the exact form of that, but that is something that has been, I can say, consistently contemplated, that neither the state nor the city was looking for a situation where the city would take title over the property and then let it sit for several months a year. So there's both impetus and incentive for the city to get moving on the project as soon as the conveyance is complete, and I mean even beforehand, making preparation steps like this in order to, be able to get to work immediately upon conveyance. So that way we're not pressing those deadlines too much.
Right. What type of deadlines or time frame are we talking about? Or is that not public?
No, I think we're pretty close to agreement on that. I believe what we are looking at is 2 years to to select a developer and begin initial designs, and then 4 years to actually put shovels in the ground, start construction. So they are I mean, just depending on how the process go, I can see us beating those deadlines by a whole lot. I can also see situations where, we're pressing up against those. It just kind of depends a lot on how proposals come back. Once RFPs are sent out. So I think those are reasonable deadlines, and also I think there's a recognition that if we truly are pressing up against the deadlines, that there's an ability to extend by agreement with the state to kind of recognize what's going on the ground and determine, is this worth pursuing for X amount of additional time. And if I could clarify a previous answer to a question you had, if this were a board or commission that had some type of final decision-making body or decision-making capability, the term is granted a portion of the city's sovereign power, then a bill would be necessary. But because this is a recommending advisory board only, resolution is an appropriate way to do it.
And then my final question is related to the fiscal statement. It said no direct fiscal impact. I assume staff will support this body. I assume it'll be an active committee that's going to have workload to it. So is it going to require additional resources at some point, or are we pulling staff time from other places?
It's contemplated that staff time would just be dedicated to it. I mean, I expect a lot of legal staff time on the project, but as it's not, I don't consider it as extraneous to the duties of my department, so I don't see this as additional workload. It's just another component of the legal staff workload, and then if there are other, finance, planning, public works will be probably the usual suspects on staff input on the process, and so I feel as though that characterization is the same for those departments as well. So additional staff time, but I wouldn't consider it additional staff time above and beyond what's already required.
And I would mention on the 11-member group that the 3 county commissioners, if we only had one, it would be a 9-member group, which I would be fine with either the 9 or 11. Once we get beyond 11 members, it can be kind of cumbersome to be efficient and have everybody, meeting, and it just, 11 is about probably the right size. All 3 commissioners were interested in participating, so that's why we ended up with that. If one of them had wanted to, we would have done that, but all 3 had an interest in knowing that really the most major part is MSP Parkway as far as working with the county and how important that is. We were very happy to welcome all 3 since there was an interest on behalf of all 3 to participate. And then as far as the wards, with MSP kind of almost coming together, it kind of converges among 3 wards. So that's why we have those 3 representatives. And then also just wanting to pick one that was outside of those 3 wards. So that's how we ended up with the 4th ward representative. Certainly if council decided they wanted to add 3rd ward, I would leave that up to council. That would bring it to an even number 12-member board or group. But the makeup of having those 3 wards, and I did get a chance to visit with council members to ask who had the most desire as well, and see who was interested as well. So, but I would certainly leave that open if council wanted to all be on it. They could certainly have all 10 as well. So I guess we could leave it up to council who would want to serve on this like I said, they're open meetings, they're public, it's all going to come back to council too. I think Councilman Prather had something.
Ryan pretty much answered my question.
Okay. Any further questions, deliberation? And is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any further deliberation? Roll call, please.
Henry,
Nay.
Hussey,
Aye.
Kimna,
Aye.
Mahalovich,
Aye.
Prather,
Aye.
Schreiber,
Aye.
Ward,
Aye.
Wiseman,
Aye.
Fitzwater,
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Resolution passes. Item 15, presentations from the gallery on other topics. We have Mrs. Jane Beadham signed up.
Moratorium on demolitions in that area was extended for 60 days. So we wanted to come back to you and let you know what has been going on in the meantime. I won't go over all the documents that you received in the email. The application we've been putting together, you've received that, or should have received that, has the history component as well as the architectural character of the buildings described for each of those. You may have noticed, if you looked at this, the architecture of this neighborhood is obviously not as fancy as Capitol Avenue, but these are houses that were more typical of middle-income families. And the neighborhood has strong connections to Jefferson City's African-American history, as our research has borne out. We reached out to FEMA through Congressman Luke Demar's office. As you know, FEMA has been slammed with a lot of hurricanes, fires in California, numerous natural disasters. So through the congressman's office, we were able to identify a person who would give us an answer. So you've received that email with that text, and then also a handout that it kind of breaks down the bureaucratic language and explains why we believe that the local historic district will allow us to accomplish our goals. So if this neighborhood were determined to be a local landmark, local historic district, the 50% of current value restriction could be, variances could be given to remove that, so that homeowners who desire to rehab their buildings and improve their property value could do so. With that restriction removed, we expect to see the neighborhood continue to improve. And even though the neighborhood hasn't flooded in the last 50 years, rehab of these houses would still have to include things like raising the HVAC, electrical panel, and hot water heater above the base flood elevation. For some houses, this may be 1 foot or less. For others, it may be several feet, but it would provide protection for these homes should there ever be a flood in the future. We've sent the property owners in the proposed district the draft design guidelines to review and have scheduled a meeting for November 8th to discuss the application, the proposed guidelines, and the application process with them. So to have a complete package to present to the city for full review, the ordinance requires us to have 75% of the property owners submit a notarized signature saying they approve formation of a local historic district. So that's what we'll be working on very shortly. In our August meeting with staff, we asked who would be making this decision for the city on the 5 properties that the city and/or Parks and Recreation Commission own, and we still haven't gotten an answer on that. So we will await an answer on that, and that may have an impact on whether or not the 75% can be obtained. I know the city staff are really not wanting to pay back funds to the feds, the $80,000 that was invested in 408 Lafayette, and I don't blame them. It's hard to take a big chunk like that out of 1 year's annual budget, but I believe that we've come to this point based on a number of decisions that were made by city staff years ago. These are kind of the consequences I can't say it, consequences of the decisions that were made back around 2012. And so I would ask you to think toward the future and think, isn't a whole neighborhood in our city worth more than $80,000? If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer those.
Thank you, Mrs. Beadham. Are there any questions of council? Councilman Prather?
You mentioned a meeting. Is that this Wednesday, I believe?
I think it's Thursday at High Street Retreat.
High Street, okay.
And several of you have been invited.
Okay.
It's open to city council members, primarily to
Yeah,
discuss
those-
with the property owners
Wednesday,
what
too.
the situation is, and what we're proposing.
Yeah, we might want to check that out because we all have Wednesday. You just want to make sure.
It's November 8th, whatever that,
It would be Wednesday.
okay.
Yeah,
That's-
at 5:30, correct?
I believe so.
Okay.
So you said there's a meeting this Wednesday at 5:30 for what again?
We have invited the property owners so that we can review the design guidelines with them, the process for establishing a local historic district, what that means, and explain that to them.
Okay, so Wednesday at 5:30 at High Street Retreat.
Yes.
So, and I'm not sure, is city staff, are you aware of that to be there to answer questions?
Yes, Madam Mayor. I was personally invited by Jenny Smith, and I'm going to bring Jamie and Eric along in case there's any questions we can answer.
Okay. Great. Any council? Any more council? Pardon me?
I'll be attending.
Okay. Or any further, also questions? And Mr. Kroll, did you have a comment too?
I was just going to say, do we need to answer the question on who makes the decision on the properties?
As the properties are owned by the city of Jefferson, I think the city council is the appropriate decision-making body on any decisions
I
that
would
affect
agree.
real estate.
Okay, thank you.
What process do we have in place at this time for that, Mr. Molman?
There is no processes in place, so, I mean, essentially any type of action would be where we can get clear direction from a majority of the council would be appropriate. So that could range from a motion to a full-blown ordinance.
Yeah, it needs to happen at a council meeting, formal action, and I think based on whatever information staff I would think would make a recommendation, but if not, I mean, that's certainly an action that needs to occur in a
Yeah.
formal process.
Yes, that's correct.
And aren't we getting close to a deadline, though? What would be our timeline for action?
Sonny?
We've inquired, and we don't have a hard set deadline yet, although we were told a while back, 18 months, 12 months. Jamie's actually contacted the program folks, and I believe still has not.
This is on the grant portion of that, yeah.
Yes, this is referring to the $80,000 or approximately $80,000 for the 408 Lafayette. I anticipate receiving closeout instructions sometime this month on the grant.
There are, if I may, there are some actions which could work parallel to that decision-making process. The demolition portion, I think, is really up to council, and we can handle that fairly easily. So there's really that piece, and then the grant piece, and then I think as we get a proposal, we can certainly bring that forward to council and can make that decision. But on the properties.
Councilman Mahalovich?
I think it'd be appropriate for us to go ahead and attend the meeting, those that want to attend Wednesday, and then as maybe in the due process, we bring forward a motion or something that would say whether or not how we would vote on that conservation district. It's not a conservation district, a historic district, rather.
It would be a local historic district. My understanding is it would have to be presented to the city for review by the Historic Preservation Commission, and then Planning and Zoning, I think, and then the city council. Is that correct?
I don't believe it's a planning and zoning matter. I believe it's Historic Preservation Commission and then to City Council.
Okay, so there's only two steps. All right. So city council would definitely have a part of the process before it would be adopted.
Councilman Mahalovich and then Councilman Henry?
I think what I see going on here is it's a flood zone, a floodplain, and that you're still, for a while there, it appeared that there was a denial of that being in a floodplain, which I have full confidence that based on engineering and based on what we'd handed over to the federal government, they'd decided that that was where it lied. And I don't think we're taking up any questions about moving that line. We're just taking up the question of a historic district that lies within a floodplain. And then you said, I think I remember, that doesn't skirt the issues about having to prepare for the floods in terms of remodeling, but it does the 50% rule, which is if you have over remodeling that is over 50% of the value,
Yes, the current restriction is that if you pay $20,000 for a house, for example, you could only spend $10,000 to rehab that house. And so that doesn't go very far these days. So if we remove the 50%, which the FEMA language says that a local historic district meets their definition of a historic building, therefore the variances could be given by the city so that those properties could be rehabbed.
So the thing we're faced with a lot of times is we get a lot of complaints from flood damage in other parts of the city. And people said, you know, the city didn't plan well and we're on the hook for it, or we should be on the hook for it. How would this be different than what we're hearing from the other parts of the city in regard to people that would maybe be impacted by a flood in the future, in terms of insurance, in terms of anything?
For a couple things. First of all, a number of houses in the city have been damaged by stormwater, not necessarily floodwater, and so they're not in the floodplain. They were totally taken unaware when the floods came up. This is in the floodplain. We're not, we're not debating what the flood map is, but we are concerned that we're not sure that the impact of the Corps of Engineers project in the 1960s has been fully taken into consideration because this area has not flooded in the last 50 years. It didn't flood in 93, didn't flood in 95, and hasn't flooded recently. So what the flood issue is FEMA allows that the regulations can be issued, a variance can be issued, so that historic houses can be preserved even though they're in a flood area. That doesn't mean we ignore the flooding potential. As property owners come forward to get a building permit to do a rehab of the property, they would be required to raise the infrastructure above the base flood elevation so that if there was a flood, it wouldn't be as likely to be destroyed. So the electrical, the HVAC, hot water heater, those things would be moved out of the basement.
Good, thank you for that explanation and appreciate your work on this. And I think the thing that I'm seeing in this is that when we had the original Central East Side plan, we had lots of people involved, and that's what they wanted to do in an area, the Central East Side. And I would not be in favor of changing something in an area for which there was a group that planned it unless there's residents in that area that wants it changed. And the significance of this change would be this, is that we move forward, there's a demolition ordinance that's bubbling up. That demolition ordinance, currently, the only street in the city that's protected is Capitol Avenue. Only street. The development of these conservation districts are what protects that community for further demolition in the future. It changes the nature of which the city can protect that neighborhood. And we would hope that, I would hope that as we go down through this planning that we may even soften the rule of 75% of the landowners to ensure that there's neighborhoods that get together that want to preserve the neighborhood, and that if they choose to do that in their neighborhood, then I'm not sure if I'm here to stop them. I'd be in support of that.
Well, in the design guidelines also, we have proposed design guidelines for existing buildings, for additions, and for new construction. So that should there be new construction, that would be governed by the design guidelines. Actually, we started with the East Capitol language and amended it to meet this area.
Councilman Henry?
There's 27 properties in our proposed district. About 20.
Further questions?
All right, thank you. If you all could give us guidance, since the demolition moratorium will end on November 17th, do we need to come back on the 20th, or how do we want to address that? We don't want to drop the ball. That's all we're concerned about.
I talked to staff, and I believe that we have time. We're not going to go out and demolish anything. So we have time to have another meeting prior to being worried about any demolition. Does that sound right? Right.
That would give us time to have our meeting on the 8th and come back to you with what the property owner said. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we leave this subject, I would be remiss to say if there is a majority of the council members who plan on attending the meeting on the 8th, that you inform Ms. Powell. That would be a public meeting that would have to be posted. So either coordinate with Ms. Powell to avoid a quorum, or if there will be a quorum there, let us know so that we can go through the appropriate processes under the Sunshine Law. Thanks.
Thank you. Item 16, council and staff discussion of presentation topics. Any discussion? Item 17, any new business? 18, any unfinished business? 19, is there a motion to approve the closed session minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Fitzwater.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Henry.
Aye.
Hussey.
Aye.
Kemna.
Aye.
Mahalovich.
Aye.
Prather.
Aye.
Schreiber. Ward.
Aye.
Wiseman.
Aye. Motion passes. Item 20, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, right? Aye. Okay.